Hello everyone, I'm Cloud and welcome to Anime no Mi. Today we're going to talk about Shanks the Red-Haired, one of the most powerful pirates today, perhaps one of the most powerful of all times. In addition to one thing we are sure, he holds many mysteries, and many of these mysteries indicate that he could cheat on Luffy at any time, and that from the start he would be taking advantage of Luffy's straw hat. So I'm really counting on his support to leave your like in today's video, and I'm also really counting on you to subscribe to the channel if you're still new here. Now let's go to the video. Guys, I recently talked about how Shanks and Luffy can join forces to face the most powerful opponents, especially Teach, who already has a past history with the Red-Haired. But talking about that, I also mentioned the fact that many of the actions that indicated that Shanks would be on Luffy's side could also show that he was a great villain. In the video I said that if you wanted I could tell you why. After all, in the manga we find several mysterious actions by Shanks, showing that he knows more than he seems. So in today's video we're going to talk about all this, about all the facts that show us that Shanks can not only be a great villain, but the ultimate true villain of the whole One Piece. Come on, Shanks was part of the most memorable crew in the entire history of the entire world, Roger's great crew, and even though he didn't make it to the end of that journey, he sure discovered a lot on his trip on the Aro Jackson. We realized that even Buggy being by his side for a good part of the time, almost all the time, it was the Red-Haired who ended up discovering more about the seas and drawing more attention. He was the boy who received the straw hat of the King of Pirates. And after a few years he was once again on one of the biggest crews in the world, this time his own crew, the Red-Hair Pirates. But Shanks, like Roger, was never a conventional pirate. It turns out that as much as he didn't seem to be focused on accumulating many treasures or mastering the seas, the one who 6 years ago came to become a Yonko, Shanks keeps a big invisible secret, and all his steps are part of a bigger plan, and that's something confirmed and we saw in the manga. But what is Shanks's real plan? Let's talk about the movements that we saw him living in the manga, and that indicates something bigger for the entire future of the One Piece work, and especially for Luffy. That's because the whole story of Luffy is tied to the story of Shanks, and not only the fact that he inspired him to be a pirate in the future, but more importantly, the boy with the straw hat won the straw hat from Shanks because he saw in Luffy the one who gave him the straw hat. It seems confusing, but you understand, Shanks saw Roger in Luffy, and that was the biggest reason for that boy to draw his attention, and also for him to put him in his plan, because Shanks will treat Luffy to Whitebeard as the future of pirates. A long time ago the Red-Haired was beside Roger as I mentioned, but was not present when his teammates arrived at Laugh Tale and got the One Piece, while as I mentioned he knew more than Buggy. And a most important point for the actions of Shanks in the future was the return of his captain, soon after reaching the final island of the entire Grand Line. In that place everyone laughed a lot, but in the reunion between Roger and his apprentice, the Red-Haired was the one who asked something and shed tears with the answer, and that could be what would change the whole future. Luffy and Shanks met in the East Blue, where young Luffy always chased Shanks asking to join his crew, including giving Scar himself to show courage and fearlessness, and as much as he didn't tell him, he saw his old captain in that boy, Luffy. But the most important point would be later, when after eating the Goma Goma no Mi and seeing Shanks refusing to fight, Luffy ended up being taken by Higuma and his gang and was eventually rescued by the Red-Haired, but was rescued in a somewhat strange way. I've already mentioned to you that this prologue for me would have introduced us to two Haki. The Haki of observation, which would be how Shanks quickly found out where everyone was and also to find Luffy in the middle of the sea. But the point is, from what we know of Shanks, and from what we saw Luffy talking after his idol being attacked by Higuma who despised pirates, the boy was already showing that he could try something against those villains, what he did, and that Shanks possibly would predict that would happen. But even so the Red-Haired let it happen, and after that, after reaching that place where the whole village was, he simply let Luffy be taken towards the sea, escaping by a simple smoke screen. It's worth remembering that this was only 5 years before he became a Yonko, and at that moment, he could already use the observation Haki to see Luffy being taken, but he let it happen, and that's not counting the following fact: when he arrived there, he could have easily taken down Higuma and everyone there with his King's Haki, which he didn't do either. And in the end, in the middle of the sea, he simply let a Sea King take his arm when he saved Luffy, which he could easily prevent with his Bosashoku or Hashika Haki. And after that we saw how he said that had lost his arm because he bet on the new generation, while he wanted to talk about a pirate who was his enemy in the past, Teach, where the Red-Haired already said that Teach had a great plan, and he seemed to try to warn Newgate of what the future would hold if he faced his ex-crew. But analyzing this event, seeing in part what happened, many people started to wonder if Shanks really had bet on the new generation, or to guarantee that Luffy would continue to admire him in the future, and this to use him in his plan. Also, the fact that Shanks did not participate in the beginning of the Battle of Marineford, as we know he was initially confronting Kaido and arrived after the fall of Edward Newgate, however much he already imagined something like this could happen. Shanks had already foreseen this battle, but he was far away, being that he could be a key to everything being different, so much so that Teach didn't want to face him at that moment. Maybe Shanks wouldn't even show show up there. But he appeared, he arrived at that place, and that would have been because he didn't foresee that Luffy would also be able to cross the seas like that to save his brother. Even though he imagined that the Straw Hat Boy would do great things, and being key to his future plan, he didn't imagine that he could so quickly be in the confrontation of the best. And seeing that the boy Shanks, has such high hopes for the future was in great danger, being targeted by the admirals and becoming someone who was being as focused by opponents as Edward Newgate and Ace, he immediately went there to save him. But that still wasn't the moment the red-haired wanted to meet up with Luffy and get the Straw Hat back. He needed to wait for another moment in the future, which he recently said was already close. Finally, after that battle, he made sure the Navy didn't get Ace and Edward Newgate. But then why would he do that if helping them wasn't his goal and he just wanted to save Luffy? Simply because that way he would guarantee even more respect from Luffy and also powerful allies, earning the admiration of those who fought for Newgate as well, as we saw Marco thanking him. But the most important thing came after that. After all, Shanks simply went to the capital of Sekai Sifu, where the Tenryubitos lived. He simply entered the capital where the empty throne was, and no one stopped him. And most importantly, for what he did it for, Shanks simply moved to meet the Gorosei, the leaders even among the leaders of the entire One Piece world. And even then, they didn't seem to mind his presence, like maybe they were used to it. And after that, Shanks said he needed to talk to them about a pirate. And going back, as we know, there are two pirates that call the red-haired's attention these days. Among the Yonkas and the whole worst generation, we see that Shanks only talked about Luffy or Teach. Basically, Shanks wanted to warn the pirates' biggest enemies about a pirate, or simply warn them not to get in the way of his plan. In either case, he would either be allied with Sekai Sifu or want something for Luffy. And we already know that Shanks also talked about Luffy in moments beyond the moment he met Newgate, and in all those moments he talked not just about the Straw Hat Boy, but about himself and Roger. Shanks had already talked about seeing his old captain in the Boy in the Hat, and that to Rayleigh, who was beside Roger, and that he would also come his captain in the Boy in the future, and maybe Shanks was already preparing his old commander to help the Straw Hat. Plus this confirms more about his interest in Luffy. Another point was Shanks saying that just like Ace when he returned by Newgate, Roger also didn't run away from confrontations, that the red-haired wanted him to run away, and also said that the Straw Hat could cry differently than his captain never cried. And remembering that while everyone previously smiled at arriving on the last island, when they saw their captain again, Shanks cried a lot, as if disappointed in something. It didn't seem like a cry of happiness. Does Shanks want Roger to do something he hasn't done, and which he also doesn't see himself capable of? And does he hope to make Luffy complete the plan he's created since he was with the King of Pirates? Has he been manipulating Luffy and using him for his own purposes from the start? In this video today I just mentioned what the manga shows to us, and we see that if we change the way we see everything a little bit, Shanks seems to have a hidden plan. So what do you think about it? Would he be a villain? Comment what you think in the video. Don't forget to leave your likes in the video to help the channel, and also subscribe if you're still new here. The channel is new and needs your help. Thank you so much for watching our video so far. Your support is very important. See you in the next video. Bye.